you just pause a second? It appears that YouTube has not got sound at the moment, and the guys are just sorting it out at the back. I don't want them to miss what's going on. Thank you. Is that it, chaps? Okay, thank you, Rebecca. You can continue. Thanks.
Apologies. I'll start again. The application site is located to the northeast of Tiffield Village and shares its boundary with the existing Gateway School. The Gateway School apologies, The Gateway School is a secondary school specialising in catering for young people with an educational healthcare plan. To the west of the application site are agricultural fields. Playing fields to the Gateway School are to the south, and St John's Road forms the boundary to the north. To the south of the Gateway School is a secure children's unit, which was built in 1995 but is now closed. The site gradually slopes north to south by approximately 10 metres. There are 4 brick-built buildings on site constructed in the 60s with a mixture of 2 and 3 stories. I'll just go through some of the photos. These buildings were used by the former county council to provide children and family services in Northamptonshire. These buildings will be demolished as they are no longer fit for educational purpose. I just show members some of the photos. So this shows the site along St John's Road to the northern boundary. And this shows the existing screening which is provided along St John's Road. This is the photo showing the access to the site, views towards the A43 and then also views towards Tiffield Village itself. Here's some of the photos of the existing buildings, 2 and 3 stories. And then these are the photos of the junction onto the A43, the central area. In the middle, you've got views towards Northampton, and to the right-hand side, views towards Towcester. And the final photos are just on the western boundary with the agricultural fields and looking again towards St John's Road. So just briefly about the need for the school. WNC currently have a large demand for SEND places, which has led to significant capacity pressures, and all current specialist provision within the district has either reached or exceeded capacity. This has led to financial pressures for the council, as out of county or independent provision is proving more costly and creates longer journey times for the pupils. As such, to address this current and future shortage, WNC plans to deliver 600 SEND places by 2025. The school has been designed to accommodate 252 pupils, which will allow for emergency placements and other extenuating factors. So the proposal is for a special needs, educational needs and disabilities school. It will cater for children between the ages of 4 and 18. It will be 3 stories in height, and there'll be a tarmac outdoor PE area will be provided for the children, as well as a covered area for Key Stage 1. Due to several ecological level and access constraints, the new school has been placed in the northwest corner of the site. The accommodation has been arranged over 3 stories to allow maximum use of the site, delivering appropriate volume of parking and drop-off provision while ensuring significant outdoor play provision for the pupils. The building form has been developed in line with the Department for Education superblock typology, which delivers efficiency in the school layout, placing the taller hall and drama spaces at the centre of the plan and teaching accommodation around the perimeter. I'll just show you a plan form of that. The design of the building has taken into account the needs of the pupils. The plan has been arranged in a way that divides the accommodation into 5 phases and allows for a degree of flexibility between pupil age and learning, which is more appropriate to the SEN environment. Each phase then has correlating support spaces which are consistent with the provision across the age groups, including calm rooms, intervention rooms. The plan enables this repetition and it retains consistency in the look, feel and arrangement of the spaces, which is one of the desires of the school's trust and aids the children as they move through the school. The proposed building will be 3 stories and will be visible above the existing tree belt along the western boundary. It is, however, considered that any visual impact of the building will be minimal and not significant. The proposed building has a strong visual association with the adjacent Gateway School campus, which means that it is viewed in the context of the existing development as opposed to the wider rural setting. The existing proposed trees will help soften its appearance within the wider setting. I just move on to I'll go through some of the elevations, sorry. So this just shows the detailing of the doors and windows in more detail. These are the elevations. And that's just showing how the floor plans all sit with each other. So in relation to highways, there'll be 134 parking spaces provided, 7 EV charging points and 5 spaces marked for car share users. Access to the site is via a reconfigured arrangement to the existing Priority Junction along St John's Road. This comprises of widening the Priority T junction to accommodate service vehicle swept path manoeuvres and will lead to a one-way system through the main car park and drop off before the vehicles return and exit onto St John's Road. The parking management strategy has been prepared and approved by the local highway authority, which details how children will arrive and leave the school. Staff will arrive on site first in advance of children arriving, ensuring that there's no conflict between staff and pupil-related traffic. As pupils arrive, staff will welcome and guide pupils into the building. The majority of the pupils will arrive and depart by minibus. The minibuses will park on the site in the dedicated sections of the car park. Any pupils arriving by taxi or private car will park along the Eastern Access Road. I'm not sure whether you can see my cursor. So this is the Eastern Access Road down here. Gates will be secured and only open once all minibuses have left the site. Again, staff will supervise the private cars and taxis and ensure that pupils enter the school safely. WNC School Transport have confirmed that most, if not all of the minibuses will require an additional adult to travel alongside the driver. A second adult is required for any children under 11 years old and is also additionally assessed on pupil behavioural needs. 4 objections from local residents have been received, raising concerns in relation to highway safety. Just go back to the photos of the access into the A43. The Parish Council have also raised concerns in connection to the A43 and the safety of vehicles entering and exiting the site from the A43. Following the submission of additional information, both National Highways and the local highway authority have removed their original objections. National Highways do not consider that the development would have an unacceptable impact on highway safety, or that the residual cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe to warrant refusal of the application. They have no objection to the subject to the imposition of 2 conditions relating to the construction management plan and a travel plan. The local highway authority have also confirmed that the relatively low numbers and the small increase in forecast figures, there'll be no material impacts on the junctions and consequently remove their original objection and now support the application. Updated information has been submitted to ensure that the visibility displays along the access to St John's Road meet the requirements. The visibility displays have resulted in the removal of a larger section of the hedgerow. In order to compensate for this loss, additional planting has been taken place behind the visibility displays in order to provide additional screening for the development. In regards to ecology and biodiversity net gain, the development will result in a net gain of over 10%. The badger sets have been identified, and as such, the site will be developed in 2 phases. The first phase is outside of the exclusion zone of the existing set. An artificial set has been created and the existing badgers are on now using this set. These sets are being monitored. The second phase of development will require obtaining a license from Natural England for the closure of that set. To date, field evidence is in hand to confirm that the original set is no longer in use by the badgers and may have been abandoned. Monitoring is ongoing. Both Natural England and WNC ecologists have raised no objections to the proposal. To conclude, as set out in the report, officers consider that the application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the report, and delegated authority, the Assistant Director of Planning and Development, to approve any amendments to conditions as necessary. I would just draw members' attention to the late items, the written late items. I also do have some verbal updates as well. So the Crime Prevention Design Advisor has responded with no objection. And there's a couple of further updates to conditions. Condition 2, there's an additional plan, the tree retention plan, that needs to be added. Condition 13, the construction management plan. This has now been agreed with National Highways, the local highway authority, and with environmental health. So it's now has been reworded to be a compliance condition in accordance with the approved construction management plan, and that's revision D. And then finally, in accordance with the Crime Prevention Design Advisor's comments, there's a further condition that sets out that the development shall be carried out in accordance with the crime prevention measures that are set out in 2 emails that have been received. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Rebecca. Before I call on James to add to that, I'd like to inform Councillor Gonzalez of Savage that unfortunately, because you arrived late, I won't accept a vote from you, but I will accept you participated and joining in on the discussion. So, okay. So yes, James Roger would like to add to the officer's presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to comment on some of the material planning considerations related to this application. So there is clearly a lack of, there's clearly a strong need argument for this SEND provision that will be provided through this school, and it will in particular address need in the former South Northants area. And the Tiffield St John's site would obviously resolve a number of educational need arguments, but actually also of importance, it would reduce journey times to and from school for children and young people with existing SEND needs. So I just wanted to leave the thought that the pupils that will be coming to this school, some of them actually have quite long journeys within WNC and further afield at the moment, and it would also reduce the home to school transport costs for the council with respect to a number of those cases. And I'm not going to read them out in full, but the council's educational team have set out in the report the kind of statutory obligations of the council and the very strong need argument for this particular school. Officers are nonetheless conscious that concerns have been raised regarding highway impacts and highway safety, and we haven't put the full commentary from National Highways in the report, but I thought it might help if I spoke a bit further about that. So the first point, it's important to note the distinction between roads under WNC and National Highways jurisdiction. So the A43, which as we all know is a dual carriageway with 2 northbound and 2 southbound lanes in operation, has right turn slip roads and an internal give way arrangement with the central present within the central reservation, as well as deceleration and acceleration lanes present for the junction with St John's Road, shown on the photos close to the application site. So National Highways are responsible for this part of the highways network. And it should be noted in the context of total traffic flows. The proposed development will generate a number of additional trips and potentially a quite small number of additional pedestrian and pedal cycle movements, but is not considered that the size of these increases would have any measurable influence on the free flow of traffic or on the junction of the A43 with St John's Road. And a further point to note is that technically it's not a greenfield site, and so there's an extent use that would generate some traffic movements in itself. Nonetheless, National Highways did initially object to the application. So, and then the applicant did a detailed rebuttal that ran to hundreds of pages that they called a Highways Technical Note to address National Highways concerns. And then National Highways withdrew their objection. So the bit I just wanted to do is to read out to you actually why they withdrew their objection, because it's not actually set out in full in the report. So I'm just going to read this out, Chairman. Since issuing our previous response in November, the applicant has submitted additional information. Having reviewed this, we are now content regarding the peak hour details, trip generation, trip distribution, and development phasing details. The observed traffic survey data provided by the applicant is higher than the automated traffic count ATC data obtained from Web TRIS. My Highways colleague can clarify some of this if required. Despite this difference, the existing A43 St John's Road junction performs well within its theoretical capacity in the future year 2030, with no evidence of notable increases in delays or queuing. Therefore, no improvement works will be required to increase the capacity of the junction. The applicant has submitted a travel plan which sets out proposals for how staff and pupils will travel to and from the site, as well as measures to encourage sustainable means of travel. In addition, the implementation and performance of the plan will be subject to monitoring and review by West Northamptonshire Council, which may propose additional measures be adopted. National Highways does not consider that proposed development have an unacceptable impact on highway safety, or that residual cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe, as defined in paragraph 115 of the MPPF. However, we recommend that a condition requiring adherence to the terms of the travel plan should be attached to any grant of planning approval. So I just wanted to read that out because it actually, I think, gives some useful context that they did thoroughly consider the application and then have subsequently confirmed that they don't object to it. I'd also add that the majority of pupils would arrive and depart by minibuses with staggered drop-off and departure times. Furthermore, arrival and departure times to be varied from the adjacent Gateway school site. The travel plan and parking management strategy are conditioned and they are set out in the report. I'd further add that vehicle movements associated with the use with the early morning and 3 to 4 p.m. for pupils and 4 to 5 p.m. for staff. Importantly, this avoids the current network peak hour, which is 5 to 6 p.m. Ian Haley, our WNC Highways officer, can provide more information in detail, but put simply, whereas we appreciate the A43 junction may be of some concern, National Highways have fully analysed the application and not objecting. In conclusion, the application is recommended subject to the conditions and variations as set out by Rebecca for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, thank you, James. Right, that's the end of the presentation stage. So it's a chance for members who've got any questions, and I do stress questions of the officers on the presentation so far. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. You say that National Highways have withdrawn their objection. Does that mean to say they approve that particular layout with regards to that area or that road junction?
What National Highways are saying is that they've fully, so initially they didn't feel that the information before them was robust enough. That would be my simplistic summary. They then subsequently had a very detailed technical note explaining in more detail matters such as travel plan and traffic management within the school site, etc. And they are now satisfied that such that they are not objecting to the application. And I wanted to read out their detailed comments because there is no kind of residual concerns, as it were, embedded in their comments. They are basically saying, subject to the conditions we've put in the report, they are not objecting. And that particular bit of road network is under the jurisdiction of National Highways, and so we would refer to them for their comment.
So presumably we can actually say that National Highways have approved that particular problem with regards to that junction.
I guess technically they aren't objecting, but that they are kind of, yeah, they are happy, would be one way of putting it.
Also, on another point, with regards to the traffic coming from the Tove roundabout towards Northampton, are they intending to increase that deceleration lane into St John's Road?
Not as far as I'm aware, but I'll refer to my highways officer to make sure you get the absolutely correct
Hayley?
answer.
Yeah, hi. Obviously I've looked at some of the National Highways comments in detail, and currently no, they're not looking to extend that slip. They have had a safety assessment undertaken of the junction, looking at all the in-outs, the slips, and it's been it's graded, and it's been graded as low risk, and the low risk category means that no mitigations are anticipated at this time from National Highways.
Obviously, we beg to differ, but that's another story. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, councillor Humphreys, please.
Thank you. Just one comment. Tifffield Parish Council in their objection commented that the gateway school taxis are required not to use the A43. Is that for any safety reason? Do you have any information on that? Got an additional question too. Thank you.
Hayley?
I spoke to our school transport team today actually in regards to this, and it's privately run by the school and not by WNC. And I'm not aware of how the school monitor that no taxis, that would be a daily task. So I'm not quite sure how they monitor that and what the reasons, and if that is actually adhered to. I can't comment whether that's actually the case.
Okay, thank you. And James, you commented about the reminded us of the need for this school, an understatement, and the reduction in homeschool transport costs that would, if approved, it will enable, and reduction in journey times. Have we got any actual estimate, just out of interest, what the savings would be and what the journey time savings would be? It would just be interesting to know. Thank you.
Hayley?
I think that exercise wouldn't really work, because at the moment you would be basing it on the pupils that are currently in the system, and obviously that will change on a year-on-year basis. So yeah, that's not something we'd be able to analyse at this time.
Councillor Gonzalez de Savage first. You second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, my sincere apologies for arriving a few minutes late there. I had to deal with a medical situation. In terms of the original school application, and I went along to the site visit, and obviously grateful to the officers there for lending support to that. I'm fully supportive of this application. My concerns are in terms of highways, and we did address it, but would we be giving guidance to visitors to the schools and not pupils being delivered to school to use an alternative route rather than crossing effectively a 70-mile-an-hour road?
Hayley? Well, I think it's Hayley's shout, maybe, or not. Or James, you want to do it, James?
I will comment on that, but I'm conscious the applicant may speak and they may further comment on that particular question. So the first point is the majority of the pupils, and we have statistics on this, would come via minibus. So it's been so the Academy Trust, who will be running the school, are suggesting 180 pupils would come via minibus. That's 23 minibuses approximately. So actually the amount of pupils you're referring to in terms of parents and guardians, separate from those with local authority organised shared taxis or parental guardian cars, it's actually quite a low number. It's approximately 20 has been referenced in the technical highways note. So through the travel plan, what would happen is you'd have this sort of the arrival and departures would be staggered. But in terms of your question about specifically directing people to avoid particular routes, that isn't proposed.
Following on that point then, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to request that that was something that we would encourage the applicant to do so on the basis of trying to limit crossings over that junction right in front of the school.
You'll have the opportunity to talk to the agent later, so maybe you want to suggest that. Anybody else got a question? Councillor Heron.
Could you just explain to me the parking on the site with this automatic gate and the manual gate and the timing for 23 or 25 minibuses to get in? I just want to make sure that there's no chance of them backing up, particularly when you've got a manual access gate. I don't know what that means, whether they're going to have somebody on the, they're opening and closing it at every time. Yeah, if you could just explain a bit more about that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'll just share my screen again so that you can see the layout. So hopefully that's clear, well as it can be. Let me. It's not allowing me. No. It's quite a busy slide. Yeah, let me just try and zoom in. Fantastic. Okay. No, wrong way, sorry. Okay, so vehicles enter the site here. Minibuses will come in through these gates here, and they will be parked along the dark shaded areas, the parking spaces. So minibuses will park along in this area here. Once all the minibuses are in, the gates will close. The staff will already be on site to be able to, then the minibuses will move round to be able to drop the children off, and the staff will take the children into the school safely. So in terms of the gates and access, any private cars or taxis will come along this access road, so they're separate from where the minibuses will be going. They will park up alongside this access road here along the eastern boundary. Once all the children from the minibuses have accessed the school and the minibus is departed, these access gates at the bottom, if you can see my cursor here, will be opened to allow the vehicles into the site to be then drop the children off. And again, the staff will be there to take the children into the school safely. And then they will depart and both of the gates will be closed.
I'll perhaps quiz the applicant a bit more, but the idea that you can, unless they're travelling in convoy, that you can keep children on a minibus whilst all the other minibuses arrive when you've got, I don't know what the capacity of them is, but 20 children with behavioural difficulties all wanting to get into school, but you're going to make them stay in a bus until everybody's arrived and you close the gate. Might be challenging, but I'll ask the applicant a bit more about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. A couple of questions. A couple of questions. First question, have we any idea yet of the timescale of the Halkett roundabout being constructed? Rough timetable, or are we still too premature on that one? That's the first question. And then related to
Hang on,
that,
we'll get an answer to that first, won't it? Your ideas, James? Nikki, AL2.
I think the applicants are waiting for road space kind of at the moment. So the intention is sometime this year, they're planning on getting on. I don't know the exact month, but that was what they
Right.
were looking for currently.
It's being built 60%
Fine.
offline, isn't it?
And the second question is a more specialist one. Would the Holcote roundabout make it safer at that junction? If there was the possibility of just going further up the road and round a roundabout and back again, traffic that's moving south? Or would it make it more dangerous having another roundabout?
Do you want to take that one, Hayley?
I mean, yes, when that roundabout's in operation, that is certainly something that would be considered, and it would be a safer option
Right.
for drivers. Although saying that, we have looked at collision data on that junction, both National Highways, and I've looked at it independently in-house with our casualty team, and there have only been 2 accidents in the last 5 years on that junction. So that is worth bearing in mind as well. But in regards to your question, yes, if vehicles feel that they would be better to go down to that roundabout, that would be a driver decision on whether they think that's the more suitable.
Fine. And then finally, if things don't turn out as we hope, I think they do turn out, we haven't prejudiced our case against National Highways. If sometime in the future we say to them, look, something's got to be done about providing a longer slip road, they're not likely to come back, are they, now and say, well, we did, originally we objected to this, and we think that that's a matter for you from a financial point of view.
It's hard to say, David, because we're talking about a thing in the future. We're
Yeah.
considering what's in front of us here now. We can only go that, and at such point, I'm sure.
I would like to think that we've got them on the hook, that they've withdrawn their objections, so they're complicit in any decision.
Hayley, do you want to answer that one?
I mean, they have reviewed the network using the year 2030, so they have looked ahead. From a local highway network perspective, obviously the school will the intake will be in stages, and that will allow us to monitor if there's any stacking at all for the minibuses, and if there's any problems, certainly on our part of the network.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any more questions from anybody? Yes, Councillor Purser, please. Thank you.
I'm on a different topic. I'm just want to be sure how we assess the building as against policy SS2, because it says we should use a design-led approach to demonstrate compatibility and integration with its surroundings and the distinctive local character of the area in terms of type, scale, massing, siting, form, design materials and details.
Rebecca?
Thank you, Chairman. So due to the difference in levels within the site, the building, difference in levels, and there's also the ecological constraints as well. Sorry. Yeah, it's not me. Sorry, I was just trying to show that what the location of the building within the northwestern corner. So it really, that is the only location where the building can go, but it is well screened, as my photo showed that you've got. Here we go. So you've got the existing screening along St John's Road, albeit that some of it will be removed because of the visibility displays, but additional planting will take place behind that. And then you've also got substantial screening along this western edge here. So in fact, so there are views coming as you come from Tiffield, whilst the building will be seen, it's been kept as low as possible. It's 13 metres in height. And it's considered that, you know, it won't be viewed in isolation in terms of, you know, the open rural setting. You've got the existing Gateway school over here. If I just show the aerial view. So you can see that actually the Gateway school takes quite a large area of land in built form, whereas what is proposed for the new school, it's, you know, it's kind of isolated in the northwest corner. You've got the screening, existing screening, additional planting will take place as well. There aren't buildings spread around the site. It is contained, and the materials have been posed to reflect the Gateway school as well. So it is considered that it complies with that policy.
Yeah, Chair, it just didn't strike me as the most beautiful building. And I wondered, you know, I think the Secretary of State has made comments about we're meant to be producing beautiful buildings. Is that beautiful?
It appeals to a specific audience, doesn't it? The type of
It
people.
looks functional to me. We're at the functional end of beauty and functionality.
But as I understand it, the conformity and such like is what the SEND type children need. They don't need the thing that complicates their lives. They need simple structures, and I think that was possibly part of it, to be fair. Yes. Okay, thank you. Any more questions, everybody? Okay, we'll move on to public question time, of which there are 4. I'd invite Penny German, an objector, to come forward and take a seat. So if you pull the microphone towards you, press the button in the middle at the bottom, there'll be a red light come on.
Yep.
And when you start speaking, I'll give you 5 minutes and I'll let you know when there's 1 minute to go.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Yep. Penny German, resident of Caldecott. We would welcome and support the application for the SEND school in principle and are here solely to discuss our concerns over the traffic issues which we believe will arise. It is essential that a reasonable and safe travel plan is arrived at using the A43. If crossing the A43 is deemed dangerous, then we believe the Tove and M1 roundabout should be utilised until such time as a St John's or Halkett roundabout is built. The Gateway School changed its travel plan to not using the A43 junction at the first hint of the dangers that they had initially ignored, resulting in the use of the single track road through Caldecott. The current use of the village route by the Gateway School numbers taxis 4 to 5 per pickup and drop off, which is acceptable. However, an additional 15 taxis, 25 private vehicles and 25 minibuses, the anticipated vehicle movements for the SEND school would be totally unacceptable and very dangerous. Travel plans currently assess that 200 pupils will arrive via 25 minibuses. We feel it is impossible to verify these statistics until more is known about the individual pupils, their journeys and their specific needs. Some will be unable to use shared transport, necessitating additional taxis or private vehicles, and thereby increase the number of traffic movements. Arrival and departure times are going to conflict with the Gateway School and Tiffield Primary School, and also it should be taken into account that Caldecott children attend the Tiffield Primary School. As an example of traffic chaos which could occur if village routes are used, when the A43 was closed for repairs at the end of 2023, although Caldecott was not an official diversion route, traffic, including HGVs, caused horrendous and dangerous buildup of stationary traffic in the village and into Tiffield, seemingly through the use of GPS. This also affected farm traffic for the three village farms, preventing them from feeding and monitoring their livestock. The fact that Tiffield Road, the lane between Caldicott and Tiffield, is a single track lane with very few passing places and 3 blind bends exacerbates the traffic issues and the dangers. Additionally, the travel plan does not take into account the extra traffic on the A43 anticipated by the 4 developments currently pending, AL1, AL2, AL3 and AL Bell Plantation, and also the likelihood of A43 traffic rat running through the villages when prompted by GPS. So we would urge the committee to ensure that a condition is imposed to make sure traffic for the SEND school does not travel through the villages of Tiffield and Caldicott as a fallback if plans need to be revised, as discussed by Councillor James. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jim. If you want to stay, Sean, I'm sure there's going to be somebody asking you a question. Members, any questions for Mr. Chairman? No, it would appear not. Thank you very much indeed for your input. Thank you. I now invite Councillor Peter Cook of Tiffield Parish Council, who is in support. Apologies, I'm just reading off the script. So Councillor Cook from Parish Council, who's in support of this application. Thank you. Same rules apply when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Yes, my name is Laura Cook from Tiffield Parish Council. I'd like to repeat and say we support the development in principle, acknowledging the need county-wide for such a facility, and we consider it an asset to the parish and our community. We don't criticise the traffic models forecasting the traffic flow. They're clearly nationally recognised, but we're concerned that local knowledge and daily experience isn't being taken into consideration or taken seriously enough. Driver behaviour has largely been overlooked, and the lived daily experience of people who live in or travel through our parish also overlooked. For Tiffield Parish Council, the traffic modelling only looks at the volume and flow of traffic. It's an analytical tool based on numbers, and what it doesn't take into account is driver behaviours, such as impatience, lack of courtesy, pressure to meet deadlines, something we all experience on a daily basis. Ignorance, lack of local knowledge and the experience. It's these that cause the accidents and the near misses, and that we witness as locals on the A43 at St John's Junction all the time. That is with the current traffic levels before any of the proposed developments take place. Surely any national or local authority or developer should consider it as a strength or a bonus to have such local bodies like parish councils to shed light on these local issues. And this is not a question of NIMBYism. I want to reassure you that we support the development in principle. This is the daily working, living experience of all aspects of this junction. Now, we raised our concerns about the proposed traffic plan as soon as it was revealed at our first meeting with the developers and WNC when we met here at the forum on the 18th of August last year. It's our understanding that the current transport contractors for the Gateway School are told not to use the A43, something that has been already mentioned in this meeting, purely because of the safety issue. This has also been noted in our own traffic survey through the village, and it does indeed happen. It's a point we raised with Andrea Leadsom, the South Northamptonshire MP, in which she agreed, and also included in her letters to Anna Earnshaw and the head of National Highways. And something that must be considered, you'll be aware of the proposed DHL development. In the DHL AIM-SUM document published in October 2013, their own traffic volume forecast predicts a vehicle passing that junction on the northbound A43 every 2 seconds. And if that forecast has been accepted by WNC for that development, then it stands to reason, that it must be accepted for this development. In the current transport plan, very small window, as we've heard, we'll get a large volume of traffic through this junction. The applicant proposed the following for the travel of 250 pupils, 30 arriving via 15 taxis, 20 via private vehicles, around remaining 200 pupils arriving at the school via 25 minibuses. That's a huge amount of extra traffic That's not all standard vehicle car sizes, that's minibuses, SUVs, etc., reducing visibility even further. And with this in mind, how can we honestly say that the junction can cope with this volume in a limited time period? What we can offer no simple solution. There isn't a magic wand on this, other than the junction needs to be improved. We were told at the first meeting at the forum by a representative from the council that we can't afford both, it's either the school or the junction. So before any decision is made, we would like to invite any member of this group. We have got our own village minibus that's very, very well used. We will even drive you in it to see every angle, not just the small areas for the queuing traffic, but the tiny runoff areas. We've spoken about the deceleration. It's not actually a deceleration lane, it's a bus stop. So that hasn't actually been mentioned as far as I can gather today. Come and see firsthand how many drivers are so confused by this junction crossing. They will put in the wrong turning lane and create chaos for other road users.
1 minute to go.
Come to our community, speak to anyone who lives there, ask them for their views of their junction before any developments take place. You'll hear nothing but horror stories of how dangerous it is, and many local residents refuse to use it and use other alternative routes. We're purely raising this as our very real concerns for the safety of the pupils, the contractors, parents, staff and residents. We don't want to be in a position where something dreadful happens and our concerns have been overlooked or even more seriously ignored. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. If you want to remain seated, and I invite questions from members of you. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could, may I ask Councillor Cook, in terms of the location, quite clearly you're very familiar with, and you say that most residents now try to avoid that junction and therefore use alternative junctions to come through. Obviously, in terms of the crossing times of a minibus over that junction, they're much slower than the acceleration of a vehicle. And clearly you haven't got a Ferrari of a minibus, have you, that links up with the village? Can you tell us, you've obviously indicated that there are historically and regular problems there. Do most of them happen because a bus effectively is parked in the lay-by sometimes?
I couldn't tell you the bus, but it's essentially you're waiting on that junction for a long period of time. If you're then putting that junction, and if you look at it and you're familiar with it, you're putting a minibus in the junction that's waiting to cross to go over to St John's. You've got other minibuses then backing up. It doesn't take a genius to understand that a few of those, it doesn't take long for those minibuses or cars to then be going into the fast lane of the oncoming from Northampton, what I'm talking about. That is incredibly scary. If you've ever been in that position, it's incredibly scary to have that level of traffic at that speed coming past you. And we've also already spoken about the needs of the children and the patience that they're going to need dropping off at this school. That's going to be an incredibly patience, worthy time for people, the drivers and the teachers on the minibuses. That's not going to be an easy trek for anybody each morning. And all you have to do is add dusk, because some of these times they're going to be coming in at different times of the day, at winter times. You add in rain, the visibility on that junction when you're coming up, the traffic that's coming up from both Towcester and Northampton, visibility is really dim. So I can't stress how serious it is and how little movement there is and how little space there is at that junction. I hope that answers your
Thank you very much, Councillor Cook. I quite agree.
Yes, Councillor Humphreys, please.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. In view of the pressing need for the school, which the parish council acknowledges, would the parish council think it acceptable to have a condition or to insist that vehicles go up to the roundabouts to access the school rather than crossing over the junction as a sort of compromise?
We have discussed other options. Obviously, all the solutions. Closing that junction has been raised, and with the new roundabout, that is an option. Yes, with the limited amount of options that are available, I mean that's probably the most sensible one at the moment. We are simply saying that this junction is dangerous.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, thank you, Councillor Cook. Apologise for getting your.
Peter.
I invite Councillor Fiona Baker to come forward. She's the Cabinet Member for Education. and knows obviously a lot about this. Thank you. Fiona.
Thank you, Chair and members, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. Obviously, as Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education, this application is a must for me. The school was my idea in the first place, so I'll own up to that. A couple of years ago now, this has been in the planning. So we desperately need this. So you will be aware of the national shortage of education places for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities. We've all had emails from families who are struggling to find places for their children. The land in question for this school is owned by St John's Trust. The requirement to meet the trust needs for the site is for it to be an education site for deprived children. This new school fulfills their requirement and has been an education site in the past. As a council, and I myself have a statutory duty, obligation to provide education for our SEND cohort. Now we do not have enough places in West Northamptonshire. This provision will enable us to educate these children and young people nearer to their home location and avoid us sending them on very long journeys every day out of county provisions when places can be found. Approving the school will enable us to ensure that children and young people with additional needs are able to access the education in a specially built provision that is the best placed to meet all of their needs. As an all-through school, this will take the pressure off our mainstream schools to provide places for children with additional needs where mainstream is not always the best option for those needs. Pupils that do not have the right education place often end up staying at home for extended periods of time, which results in social isolation and increased mental health issues. This creates significant issues for the children and young people and their families and wider society. Our expert teams are looking closely at highway issues to mitigate the impact of the increased traffic in the area and have fully considered the concerns of the local people and the parish council we will be still doing consultations on it for years to come, I'm sure. There are many facts and figures in your papers, and our planning officer has done a very good outline of what's happening there with facts and figures. So that saved me a page of my presentation, but you already have those. I cannot emphasize enough how important this school is for the future of SEND children and young people in West Northamptonshire Council. At the moment, you know that I have admitted on many occasions that I am failing these children, and I do not wish to continue to do this. So I urge you to put that forward and consider approving the school. And our highways team will continue to look at what is happening with the traffic. And just to assure you that we will not fill the school up with 230 children on day one. It will be a progression over a longish period of time. So that will give us the opportunity to see what issues might come up. And obviously, when we're in the process of doing that, we will have the opportunity to make changes if needed. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Fiona. If you'd like to stay there. I'll start the questions off then. I keep hearing about travel plans, gateway, people going this way, that way. So what's your view on this?
As was said before by our planning team, the gateway people operate their own system at the moment. And I visited there many times, but I went there a couple of weeks ago. They have very small numbers of young people there at the moment because the criteria for the school is not meeting the needs of the children that we have at the moment. So they haven't got their full cohort of pupils at the moment. I would not advise people to take the route that they are saying. And I'm very keen, and I know that I'm going to say this anyway. I'm very keen on the comment that's put forward, and I've put forward myself, that we ask drivers to go to the roundabout. And also not to say that all of these children will be coming from the north. The provision is here because we already have a number of provisions in the north. And this is meaning that our children in the south of the county have got sometimes 2 hours trip to get to school, which is not acceptable in any of our minds at all. So this is specifically here to get young people coming from the Daventry, South Northampton areas to school. And then obviously there will be some from Northampton, but that's the main criteria we feel for this school. And the way to mitigate this, and I haven't run this past our planning people yet, but we will be giving all drivers a contract to take these young people to school. And in that contract, we will lay out the route that we wish them to take.
So just developing that, I understand you could send them, if they're coming from Northampton, send them down to the Tove roundabout and back again. But surely if they're going home and they're going south, effectively, you can ask them to go all the way to junction 15A and back again. Is that really feasible?
I agree. I tried it out the other day and it is quite a long time. I agree. So I'm not sure about that one. That's a work in progress in my mind, but obviously it won't be in our planning team's mind.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, open it up for other members to ask questions of, yes, Rosie.
Hi, can you expect, will there be any interaction between the Gateway School and this new SEND school? And also, when do you expect it to open?
I expect it to open in September 2025, and they're nodding over there, so let's hold them to that. But obviously with buildings, there are obviously, we know with buildings we've had in other places, things happen, don't they, which are out of our control. But we are planning to start children there in September 2025, because we do desperately need this provision. I'd put them in there today if we had it. So there is interaction between the two schools, definitely. I don't know if you could work out on the plan, because it was quite small, but there are some buildings on there which are converted into repairs of cars, welding, carpentry, hairdressing, all sorts of things go on in separate buildings. Is that not correct? On the site that belong to the Gateway School. And when I've spoken to the head teacher at Gateway, he is very interested in our school with some of our older students, sharing those facilities with them. They're very happy with what's happening.
Any further questions, Councillor? Yes, Councillor Gonzalez-Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fiona, ask you, if I may, as a parent and a corporate parent also, it's right to share and ensure that provisions right across that site would be shared as one. I know that Gateway School has a great sports facility there as well, so that would be super if that was possible to link that up. Can I also ask you, in terms of the well-being and understanding of that whole area, there used to be a secure site, or there still is, in that quarter, if you like, of that plan, but it's not currently being used. Are there any future plans that you're aware of from an education perspective?
I think you would need to ask for our building team, but it's my understanding that all those buildings, other than these ones I've talked to you about that belong to the Gateway School, will be demolished. Is that correct? So you can ask them when they come.
Thank you very much. I'm fully supportive of the need for the school, and I think your plan was an excellent one. We've just got to try and find the safest possible
Yes, I
access to
agree.
get to it. Thank you.
Any more? Yes, Councillor Parker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just where the pupils come from, 7.17. In terms of the proposed site, Tiffield is located approximately 8 miles from Northampton town, brackets, from where the majority of the demand for SEND places arises. So if the demand is from Northampton town, where are the rest of the people coming from?
The demand that we know of at this point in time is from Northampton, but I have to say that we daily have people being examined for these particular neurodevice conditions. I believe that we have a lot of undiagnosed children at the moment in mainstream schools in the south of our county and in the Daventry area. I've visited these schools myself. They have grave concerns about some of their students. And those students we would be able to move into this new school if the mainstream system wasn't suitable for them. So that is the demand that we have at the moment. But we have 3 special schools in Northampton already, in the Northamptonshire area.
We've already got 3.
Sorry?
We've already got 3, sorry.
Yes.
And they're at capacity.
They are at capacity at the moment, and we are supporting them in building extensions. We're also putting extensions on our primary schools in various places because we have such a demand for these places.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? If not, thank you very much indeed, Fiona.
Thank you.
I now invite James Hobson, the agent, to come forward with his expert. Are you bringing your? Yeah, yes, you can come down the front. I'll just explain to committee that James Hobson is the agent, and the gentleman with him is, I don't know his name, he's an expert on highways for them. So I'll allow James to speak for 5 minutes, and any questions you may ask may be better answered by the highways person, so to make it easier on James, really. Is the plan. Okay, James, when you're ready, I'll time you and give you a minute's warning. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my name's James Hobson, and I'm a planning consultant. Good afternoon. And this is Matt Price from Hexa Consulting, who's our transport consultant. I intend to essentially complement and support the planning officer's report by briefly outlining the key matters that demonstrate why the proposed development should be fully supported and approved and when applying the planning balance. Based on the planning merits of the scheme, I'd highlight the following. In terms of the need for the facility, the proposed development will help to ensure that the council is able to fulfil its statutory obligation by providing a sufficient number of SEN places within the council. Pupil forecasting relating to future demand for the S&D places is substantially increasing. The proposal will also assist in improving the current shortfall in places. It would also help reduce journey times to and from the school for children who live in the area. And indeed, the site is considered to be in the optimum geographical location to serve the needs of the pupils within the catchment area. Finally, it can be delivered quickly within the required project timescales, and that's been alluded to before 2025. Conversely, if the proposal does not come forward, it would result in significant consequences. A requirement to secure provision outside the catchment area would lead to increased travel demands and more expensive places, which would further put a strain on council budgets. Failure to deliver would also have an adverse impact on pupils' mental health and social isolation. Your development plan policies specifically support the growth of schools across the district and recognise the important role schools have in maintaining the quality of communities, so the principle of development is supported. The proposal would also bring a vacant and derelict site back into use, which previously catered for young people. It would also create a community education hub, given it lies close to the Gateway School. All these factors are consistent with your distribution and growth objectives found within your adopter policies. Turning to highway considerations, we have conducted a very robust approach to highway safety and junction capacity, having regard to the concerns of both the parish council and the local residents. Our assessment work has predicted the future level of trip generation and impacts on St John's Road and the A43 junction. It's also had regard to the independent third-party highway safety road audit. Both the local authority and the Highways Authority are satisfied that the development would not result in unacceptable highway impacts. As such, the proposal can be found in accordance with your relevant transport policies. In terms of landscape impact, the visual envelope of the site is limited. Indeed, many of the viewpoints already have existing appreciations of modern buildings within and adjacent to the site. Therefore, I consider that there would be no significant amenity effects. In terms of ecology, the development is able to achieve a biodiversity net gain of over 10%. In terms of great crested newts, this can be dealt with under the district licence, subject to adherence to various conditions. Badgers can be protected by operating a carefully two-phase construction strategy. And in terms of sustainability, the proposal will achieve a high level of energy efficiency standards, introducing a range of initiatives to deliver, where practicable, a net zero carbon in operation building. This approach would contribute to reducing the impact of climate change through reducing carbon emissions in accordance with the relevant development plan policies and your council's estate climate strategy.
1 minute to go.
All other technical considerations relating to drainage, noise, air quality and land contamination have been successfully addressed to ensure no adverse impacts are experienced as a result of the development. So in conclusion, the proposal can be described as a sustainable form of development benefiting from the presumption in favour of development. It would be wholly in accordance with both national and local policies, and there will be no material considerations to indicate otherwise. I would therefore respectively urge you to grant planning consent for this, subject to the planning conditions that have been agreed with council members. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hobson. So, questions for the agent, which could be answered by Matt if appropriate. Yes, Councillor Heron first.
I just want some more information. You heard me obviously asking the question. I'm just trying to understand the purpose of these, the automatic gate and the manual gate. And I suppose my issue from a highways point of view is that you're not putting impediments to cars being able to come straight off St John's Road and onto the site. And I'm trying to understand what the purpose of the gates are. Is it to stop, is it massive security to stop children being able to run out on the road, or is it to stop unauthorized visitors? And are there other ways of doing it rather than a manual gate? Is the manual gate just a barrier that goes up and down, or are we talking about a full, a full boarded gate or metal gate? Just, I'm still struggling to actually understand that aspect of it. So if you could explain it a bit more, I'd be grateful.
So Ms. Grant described the process in terms of how vehicles enter and leave the site in a very well managed way, and hence the reason for the gates. We need the gates there to ensure that at certain points during that process, that the grouping of the minibuses and also the managing of pupils works satisfactorily. So, and hence the reason for the fact that because we've got the service road as well, we can then stack up any private cars or taxis that come in the intervening period, and only allow them in terms of when the minibuses have completed their journey through and deposited the children.
So you're expecting children to be kept in a taxi cab, waiting for the priority of the minibuses. So how long do you expect them to be in? I mean, anybody who's been in a car with three lively youngsters just delivering to school and not with them any special needs would know that it's a bit of a nightmare.
I think the whole process is taking 15 minutes, and during the course of any journey, there may be opportunities, that you need to stop. And so just having an interval of being parked up in the service area for a small proportion of time is not, in our view, an inconvenience.
Why can they not just come and deliver the children into the school and drive out again? Why are you having this artificial holding area hold up? It's not usual in any other school that I can think of.
Because, well, there's other schools that where this works in the Lincolnshire area. And the priority is given to the minibus, because hence the reason for the number of minibuses, which is going to be up to potentially 25 minibuses per drop-off. And so the majority of the pupils will be coming through that route, which allows then the decanting of those pupils on the minibus before then the taxis and the private pupils stack up during the service area or within the service area.
I have to say, I can't see it working, but obviously as an operational, there could be operational changes once the school is built. What I just want to make sure is that in those operational changes, there is no danger of the traffic backing up because they're not getting free access onto the site. And that's the bit that worries me, particularly this idea of a manual barrier. And is it out of, financial constraints that you can't just have an automatic barrier and the with a PNR system?
Just to try and help Mr. Hobson there, and the fact I went to the site visit, the service road extends down through the site, so the likelihood of backing them out to the road is very minimal. And while they're unloading the minibuses there, you cannot have any cars in there, so you wouldn't use an ANPR system, because that becomes an isolated area. The taxis or the minibuses have stopped, they're unloading their children. At that point, they're very vulnerable, so they need to be all decanted, so that's the right word, into the building before they can release those, and then open the gate to allow free flow of traffic. Otherwise, you've got free flow of traffic coming in, or a lot of children are being dismounted. I don't know what the word is from the minibuses. Does that help, Mr. Hobson?
Yeah,
and the likelihood of going back to Johns Road is unlikely, because you can stack a lot of cars from Johns Road down the service road to the gate that they're proposing at the bottom end of the car park. So it's not, you go a long way onto the site before you actually get to this barrier, if that helps.
Yeah, so a lot of cars can be stacked up, waiting for the minibuses to unload, and as a result, that creates a better, safe environment for the decanting of the pupils within the minibus area and circulation around there.
Good. Councillor Manners, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just building on Councillor Herring's point, I'm not going to get into the detail of how they decant or not, but I do think the principle or the idea of lots of cars sitting there with their engines on, costing us money in terms of their time, just is pretty unsatisfactory. And a solution has to be found to get people in and out much more quickly. It will also help in terms of the traffic management. The bit that I'm struggling with, and the principle I totally support the school. I mean, I get that and endorse all the comments before. But I'm just disappointed that given the very articulate presentation from Tiffield Council, the chair, you haven't come to this committee with ideas on specifically on the travel plan to try to mitigate the impacts. And there's lots of talk, but we're being asked to approve a promise. And that's the bit I'm struggling with. I'm not saying I'm not going to vote against it, but I just think you should have given the impact. I stood on last week on the A43, that junction, and it's not great. In fact, crossing over just up the road to Blisworth, I use that junction quite a lot. You take your heart to go across it, and the traffic comes really fast. So I do think those junctions are unsafe. Well, however acceptable the national highways say, the reason I think they say it's not, it's perfectly all right, is they don't want to spend any money. I mean, that's the harsh reality of it. So I just think you should have come, with greatest respect, with more solutions to the obvious problems, which otherwise I would fully support.
Thank you.
I think in response to that we have dealt with the highway issues in an objective way, looking very, very closely and robustly at the information in an objective way. We've got a lot of controls as well through the travel plan, through the management plan that are in place, and also that we're not dealing with a greenfield site. It is a brownfield site which could potentially generate trips in an uncontrolled way. So you've got to take that into consideration, which we didn't do as part of our robust assessment. So we are improving, we're effectively improving the situation than it is at the moment.
Councillor Humphreys, please.
Could you bring?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Matthew Price, a transport planner from Hexa Consulting. Principally, my role in this particular scheme and proposals before us is not blindly to back and push as a transport planner and a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Highways and Transport. Is to objectively assess and, when necessary, propose mitigation. Through the assessment proposals, we've heard about the consultation with statutory groups and stakeholders, so let's not dwell on that too much. From an objective perspective, what we've seen, what we've assessed suggests that there are no unacceptable impacts. I appreciate it can be difficult to remove that from subjective first-hand experiences of using the roads, and this is where the challenges always present themselves. The question or the point made a bit earlier about the not taking on board some of those comments and concerns. To a point I would refute in the politest of terms. In terms of our assessment in this particular scheme, we have gone further than may typically be expected of us, principally in relation to the clear and articulate concerns that have been raised about highway safety. Those additional steps include undertaking and commissioning independent third-party highway safety assessment audits, which again have come back based on the proposals and the existing highway configuration as no particular concerns, subject to ongoing maintenance and monitoring. There has been mitigation that's been taken into account as part of the proposals as well. Not necessarily mitigation in terms of capacity enhancements on local junctions, because the modelling work would suggest that's not necessary, but mitigation in other forms, such as the provision of car share parking spaces, encouraging staff to reduce vehicle dependency. Again, looking at how pupils will be travelling in large numbers on minibuses, again, trying to minimise where possible the number of vehicle trips that will be taking place across the network. Again, one of the points was raised about National Highways involvements and perhaps their unwillingness to invest in the infrastructure that some people consider as necessary. Actually, in a scenario where a development proposal is made and National Highways are a stakeholder, they would actually be required, if they felt it necessary, the requirement to improve the infrastructure would be placed upon the applicant rather than the strategic road network operator, in this case, National Highways. So it's not necessarily the case that National Highways don't want to see improvements because they can't afford to. It's because they don't consider it necessary in light of these particular applications.
I've got Councillor Humphreys next, please.
Thank you. Just going back to your point about similar schools in Lincolnshire working successfully, is that the same scale of school? I mean, you're saying that going back to delivering the children, unloading the minibuses, it's going to be a total of 15 minutes. Is that that what happens in Lincolnshire with 180 children?
It's about that, yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pritchard next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I am concerned, obviously, with my colleague, Councillor Manners, with regards to the traffic scenario. And also, I'm very, very much in favour of the actual school itself being built. I got involved some years ago with regards to the Gateway School, and they actually, at that particular time, 10 years ago, they were very, very concerned about that junction. Anyway, that's another story. One thing I would like to be explained, what happens we've actually covered an awful lot with regards to the pupils arriving. What happens when the pupils exit the school? What happens then?
Well, the same approach. So the buses come in and collect the children, and once they're on board, then the gates are opened and away they go.
And do the children actually, with the taxis and the private hire companies, do the children leave there first, sit in the cars in the
No,
taxis?
so the pupils that are on board the minibuses go first, and then the taxis and the private collections then come through. So they wait again in the service area before they're allowed in to pick up the taxi and the private pupils.
So on the arrival, when all these minibuses arrive, and there's umpteen of them, do they sit there and wait for the last minibus to arrive before they start disembarking their pupils?
Yes, yeah.
So therefore, if one minibus gets delayed by 10 minutes, the other minibuses have to sit there and wait for 10 minutes until the last one arrives.
Yeah, well, they've got trackers on there as well, so they can work out where they are and how far away they are, so it can be carefully monitored.
But they could wait there for 10 minutes until the last one arrives.
Well, we're going on the worst case scenario, but on a typical normal day, they would wait till they all arrive. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Yes, sorry, Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of concerns I have. Firstly, the junction. We mustn't overlook anything there. And I know, Mr. Price, you've indicated quite clear that you are part of the whole application to advise from a transport perspective, and quite clearly, if National Highways felt there were issues, they would pass them on to the applicant to mitigate the cost or fulfill the cost of that mitigation. I'd like a bit of clarity on that, because I know as a local person, and I do use those areas that cross over the A43, it is like crossing a motorway effectively. And I don't know of any motorway in this country that you're allowed to cross the motorway. You're allowed to leave the motorway or join the motorway with some significant infrastructure, but not to absolutely cross effectively the lanes. And my concerns are, and I raised it earlier on, that we don't have Ferraris going into schools genuinely, nor do we have, and there's an issue there about the levels, because the centre of the A43 is on a higher level than the actual road going into the village. So if you were to isolate this particular junction concern away from the school application, I am 100% behind the school application. Absolutely needed, completely reasonable, and the right proposal. My concern is really for the community around the village itself as well, that junction is absolutely lethal. And if we put minibuses on there, we put 25 minibuses effectively, because the majority, as my good colleague indicated earlier on, the demand will be coming from the north. They're going to be queuing in the centre of the A43. How many buses can we stack up? And how quickly can a minibus that's completely stopped accelerate across 2 lanes that have 1 car per 2 seconds passing by that junction? Now, I appreciate, Mr. Price, that any words that you might utter to the National Highways would just increase the bill to effectively West Northants Council as the applicant. But I do know when I see something lethal that I have to speak up about it. And I do feel very strongly that there's a concern there for public safety, not just in relation to what this application is about. So I would value your clarity on that.
Mr.
The other
Price,
point,
do
just
you
to say, Mr. Chairman, just finishing off.
one at a time?
Well, just going to
I'll go on.
add it if I can, is that particular scenario of then going into the school has a genuine concern of mine in terms of pollution. Any vehicle stacked up for more than about a minute starts to pollute. Huge environment issues around there, and there are people who live very close to it. But I am very concerned, Mr. Chairman, about the road safety issues there, and I would presume that the most economical way would be to close off that junction on the A43.
Mr. Price?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, focusing specifically on that junction, because I dare say that's where most of the attention of this particular scheme falls right now. And rightly so, because again, from our involvement, it does present itself as something of a non-standard junction. We do come across those kinds of configurations from time to time, but it is, you could consider, non-standard. Notwithstanding that, it doesn't necessarily make it unacceptable. So as part of the analysis, specifically, I'll walk you through some of the data we collect, the process we go through. I'll try not to get too technical and bogged down because it could take some time. But in essence, we commission traffic counts, which look at peak period movements and over the course of the day, how many vehicles go straight on, how many turn right, left, etc., etc. So we know what the baseline is in terms of movements and timings. What we also do is collect queue length data as well. So we have had some comments related to the chances of vehicles stacking back on the slip road, effectively waiting to turn right in towards St. John's, not being able to get across the giveaway priority lines and therefore stacking back into the effectively what is the fast lane on the southbound side of the road. We then look and establish the proposed level of development traffic associated with the school. We then take into account future growth on the network using statistical tools that are approved by the authority and other organizations. We have also taken into account DHL and other committed development traffic as well. We then model baseline scenarios, future year scenarios, and beyond future scenarios effectively. So notwithstanding the fact this is all a tool, and I appreciate some people with their own first-hand experiences may still continue to dispute the findings of this, but ultimately all of the statistical and standardized approach that the industry accepts to modeling demonstrates that the development proposals will not result in a queue length which exceeds the taper of the deceleration lane on southbound. At the moment, we observe no more than 2 at any particular moment, and that traffic flow northbound is not so busy that it prevents people turning right towards St. John's and therefore resulting in queues on the slip. We've done that based on very robust modelling scenarios in terms of future trip generation levels. We've heard about the site having a consented level of trips at the moment, i.e. In theory, it could continue to operate as its previous function, still generating employment trips. We've discounted all of those. So from a trip generation and future predictions, we've assumed that this is a greenfield site, even though it's not. So we've taken a robust approach to baseline traffic, a robust approach to future growth. We've also included consented trips as well. So in effect, we're double counting some of the future growth of traffic flows. And notwithstanding that, again, the results we found shared with West Northants Council Highways and National Highways have been considered to be acceptable.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, may I just ask the question of Mr. Price then, would he consider that junction to be a safe junction?
Based on everything I've reviewed and seen in front of me, yes, it is not unsafe.
Councillor Addison, please join him.
Chairman, having listened to everything, I think like my colleagues, we all want to see the school. It's needed. But I think it's also time to close that junction. I think it's extremely dangerous. I think you know, and I know only too well how dangerous that junction is. And if you want, safety, I think we need to close the junction. I'm afraid I don't think that your modelling is very satisfactory.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Purser.
Yes, I was wondering whether your modelling took into account that we were expecting all the vehicles to arrive as close to a single point as is possible, because they're all, we've got 10 vehicles, as I understand it, 25 vehicles arriving within effectively a 5 or a 10-minute slot. And has that been taken into account?
It has, yes. So just to clarify in terms of the development trips that we're proposing and have taken into account as part of the development proposals, the staff we've heard about arriving first, based on the robust approach to assessment, we've considered over 100 staff car arrivals prior to students arriving on site. Once the staff are on site, based on the proposed split of pupils per minibuses, but also take into account taxis and private vehicles as well, because not all pupils would come by minibus. I think we came up with 25 minibus arrivals and then departures, 15 taxis, I think it was about 15, 20 private vehicles as well. Just to clarify some of the points about the pick-up and drop-off procedures and the gates as well, as we alluded to earlier. At the moment, the school are proposing a 15 to 20-minute window for the arrival, and let's just talk about the arrivals because the departures effectively mirrors that. The minibuses are instructed to arrive first. taxis and cars later. So it's not necessarily the case that all these vehicles are going to descend on the site at any one time. The reason there's a number of gates, though, you could almost consider it like a series of secure lines. The first gate would allow minibuses and taxis, cars to come into the site. But in theory, once the second gate closes, that's when all the minibuses are in, and the first gate remains open precisely to stop cars queuing on the road. It gives them that release lane, if you like, so they can still enter the site and wait. But there is a 15-minute window for that to occur. So ideally, they will be arriving in staggered times, but we know traffic is not always predictable. Pick up and drop off is not always, to the second. So there's a little bit of room for maneuver in that. So yeah, in terms of vehicles waiting, we would hope they don't idle with their vehicles ticking over. Yeah, we are providing electric vehicle charging infrastructure on the site. We would encourage transport users to adopt electric and alternative sustainable fuel vehicles, but notwithstanding that, the idea is that all vehicles are stationary on site before any pupils move around. And the design there is to ensure that there is no negative impact on the highway network, i.e. vehicles queuing, but equally a safe site so that there's no pupils milling about whilst there's vehicles maneuvering as well. So that sort of relates to the design a little bit. And absolutely, I wouldn't be content with vehicles idling whilst waiting.
Thank you, Mr. Price. I think that concludes the questions of the, so thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. Right, before we get into the debate, is there any feedback from Rebecca or James before we enter into debate? Either.
I was just going
Hayley.
to say that the applicant's highway assessment has indicated that measures to stop vehicles idling would be something he'd support, and we could add that to either condition 11 or condition 12. The travel plan is a iterative document and includes mechanisms for monitoring and review. So we could perhaps add that as a bullet point to the travel plan condition 11. I'm just sort of identifying that as perhaps a quick win, if I can put it like that. But I'll pass to Hayley at this point.
Hayley, thank you.
I mean, it is worth noting as well with the 25 minibuses, that not all will be approaching from the same direction. So, it's possibly an even split between the minibuses. So you will only have sort of like 12 minibuses in each direction, approximately. And I know when I had conversations before, I think when one of you brought up the fact of waiting for a minibus that was arriving late. As I say, they are fitted with trackers. If there is an instance where that happens, I was led to believe that the gates would close if that minibus was going to be too late. And then that minibus will join the queue on the slip road, and then we'll enter the site with the other private vehicles. And then that will cut down the amount of time that the children are held on the other buses. So I don't know if that helps clarify that.
Yes, thank you, Hayley. So we'll now move into the debate. Before we get there, I'd kind of like to summarise our way. I don't think any of us have an objection to the school in its own thing. We all have our differing views about how we manage the transport, the junction, the travel plan and things. So I think if we concentrate that on the debate and try and resolve that, not rapidly, but get to the crux of it, that would be good. So who wants to open the debate? Yes, your hand up first, Councillor Heron.
It's actually a question. In terms of for the highways people, is it possible to have, or has it ever been considered some spasmodic ad hoc traffic light control at that junction?
I think it's unlikely, but I'll ask Hayley to answer.
I mean, if police want to stop the traffic, if there's an accident on a motorway, they drive a car slowly and everything backs up behind them and you have to stop. I just wonder, I know they do have it, different arrangements around schools and other places. I just wondered whether there are rules against it, or have we considered it, or whatever.
I'd have thought it was right down a trunk road on the Highways England, but I'll refer myself
Yeah,
to
I
Haley.
mean, I don't have the knowledge in regards to trunk roads, but I would assume there'd be certain difficulties with putting in a traffic light system on a trunk road when your turning counts would be quite low in regards to the vehicles like doing the manoeuvres across the carriageway. And it could have quite an impact on the movements on the trunk road, and certainly I would imagine I can only imagine with the new roundabout going in, you could possibly then have traffic backing up onto that roundabout if you introduce traffic lights as well. But I'm not an expert on the trunk roads and what's permitted.
When did you say the roundabout, the Hillcote roundabout was scheduled?
I think they're scheduled to start by the end of the year, was it?
Yeah, my understanding when last we spoke, they were waiting, there's like a queuing time for roadworks. So I think
So, I mean, we're talking about a school that's opening certainly no sooner than September 2025. Would it be completed by then, do you think?
I think it's expected that it would be.
I'll say, I
That's
thought it would be.
very helpful. And on the debate side, I just want to say that, you know, we have decided to put this school there, and we're dealing with the most vulnerable set of people, citizens that we have. And, you know, we've got to really be sure that we've given them due duty of care. That's all.
Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. On page 20, where it's got WNC highways, no objection, there's a comment there that said, suggest a condition in relation to visibility displays to be submitted and approved prior to the occupation. What does that mean?
I thought that was on the St John's Road. But
Yeah, those that relates to St John's Road, because although it was an original site, we did have concerns that vehicles may be speeding along that section of St John's Road. So we asked them to undertake a speed survey, which they did, and that determined the fact that we needed to adjust the visibility displays, which have been done and since been submitted. And we have they've done exactly what we asked for. So those plans are fine now.
So that wasn't to do with the A43?
No, that was the access from St John's Road into the school site.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Yes, councillor.
Thanks, Chairman. As we're debating the application, I have grave concerns about the highways areas, which I've raised, obviously also on the site visit and today, both with the applicant and obviously I've raised with our highways teams. I completely understand the issues that have gone into it. I completely understand the fact that we've put together mitigation plans and thoughts and ideas there. The practicality is what concerns me for the entire neighbourhood, not just for the school. And certainly any vehicles crossing over the A43 are genuinely a concern to me. I've done it myself, crossed over. I cross over both ways. I also use the Blisworth junction on a very regular basis, as many of us do. And I think it's an incredibly lethal scenario. I've also driven through there at night and also in very poor conditions weather-wise. And fog is the worst thing. It seems to build up quite a lot, to be totally frank, on that road. I just wonder how much of the traffic planning has been carried out, or traffic modelling has been carried out during dark hours and poor weather conditions. I also think there's a genuinely short deceleration access from where the bus stop area is going into Tiffield. And I think that lane effect of that structure is in itself is just too short. That's irrespective of the A43 junction. And I really caution any plans that don't include significant mitigation of the risk crossing over the A43. And I would join with my colleague, Councillor Addison, in terms of the closure of that A43 junction. I'm not one to close roads willingly, but I do think that there is a lethal scenario there if we're unable to bring forward a grade separation junction or something of that nature that was originally in the plans for national highways. And I understand that still is there, but it has never been taken forward. I'm also very concerned, Mr. Chairman, that Mr. Price, who obviously raised a very factual element and responsibly answer the point that if he should make recommendations to the national highways scenarios of that road, that would increase a bill to quite clearly applicant of which we are. And obviously, we all share in that responsibility as being councillors on West Northants Council. I would far sooner prefer that we did something and invested into our highways if that was a joint arrangement with National Highways, than just put it to one side and say, well, but there was no negative observation or recommendation made by our traffic consultants who are working on behalf of obviously WNC. The school, I have no doubt whatsoever, is needed. I fully support it. My concerns are for the public safety of those reaching the school and of those residents in the area, that we have a duty and responsibility, Mr. Chairman, to make significant comments here to do something about that junction.
I thank you for that. Yeah, thank you that. But in reality, if we were to challenge this decision, on what evidence or what policies would we base that other than we don't like it? I'm sorry.
It's a very valid point, Mr. Chairman. My concern would be that the acceleration of a minibus going over the A43 or leaving the A43 from the central point is far slower than my own car. And I tried to cross that, and when there was a car coming every 2 seconds, within reported observations prior to this, on the DHL perspectives and other areas of that nature as well, we do know that the likelihood of an accident is actually quite high. I would suggest that nobody in this room today could say that there will never be an accident there. And I'm just genuinely concerned as a local resident.
And you're right to genuine concern. I'd probably go to Hayley and the fact that there is crash data for that area, and I believe it doesn't project the type of scenario we're imagining. I mean, there's tractors across there. There's a farm opposite. They drive a tractor across the motorway. It's doing 70 miles an hour, to be fair to it. I mean, so a minibus has got a lot better chance than a tractor with a trailer on the back of it. But sorry, Hayley, you help me.
I was going to say a similar thing. You know, the types of vehicles that cross at that point are very varied as it stands at the moment. They're not just private cars, and they will have varying acceleration speeds from the junction. And taking that into consideration, there still have only been 2 accidents on that junction in the last 5 years. And that's been, you know, as I said before, that's something that we've looked into with our own crash team, as well as National Highways and the road safety assessment that was done.
May I ask, Hayley, then, in terms of that perspective, clearly only 2 accidents, but there were 2 accidents, obviously, and clearly,
yes,
with increase of flow to that area, one would imagine that there will be an increased risk to additional impacts or certainly, I mean, just one vehicle, as we know, at 70 miles an hour with some sort of impact in that area could cause major impact issues there, particularly if it's a vehicle carrying multiple number of children. So I just think that at the end of the day, we should be proactively looking to invest in our highways. And if that means bringing to the table MPs, National Highways, let's do it. And let's be responsible and say, happy to go ahead with the school project. This is about a year away, but let's find a way to make that junction safer for everyone. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I still refer back to my original comment, but if we went to appeal, I know we shouldn't be considering that. We don't have any policy or whatever to stand on. Surely our best line of attack on this is developing a travel plan or something. I don't think we're ever going to get this junction altered, but that's just my personal opinion. It's not necessarily the opinion of everybody out there, but a travel plan does have the ability to maybe direct to an extent. Councillor Manners, I saw your hand first.
Thank you, Chair. Could we ask that it was on the conditions and the travel plan that the cut through to Caldicot and Tiffield is only used for those vehicles that absolutely need? I don't know what the wording is, but can we try and prevent the villages being used as a cut through for vehicles, either going north, south, east or west?
Refer to my legal expert on my right on that one. Who's that? I'm not allowed to go to my right. I'll go to my left then.
Okay, so I think what you're referring to is a vehicle routing condition in effect. I mean, what I'd firstly say is that the trip generation data and the statistics specific to this application do not support hard measures such as roundabouts, traffic lights, etc. So, but I know you're talking about, you're talking about sort of what I call softer measures such as vehicle routing. One thing we do need to bear in mind is that the vehicles coming to and from the school, you've got most of the pupils coming in minibuses, you've got local authority organised taxis or cars, and then you've got parents that may be hard to enforce, perhaps would be the simplest way. So you know where I'm going with this in terms of their particular movements. If I can just perhaps say why we didn't consider such a condition first. Firstly, obviously, Highways England were the statutory consultee, and they did have all the information on minibuses and everything that's been discussed. They have been party to all that information, but it's quite complicated to do vehicle routing conditions and to enforce them, and you're always potentially subject to the accusation that you diverted the traffic away from one problem and then you're putting it in front of a separate problem. So you will affect queuing on the arms of the new roundabout, etc. So just wanted to say the sort of reasons why we didn't consider it as officers. I mean, I think I'd probably just want Hayley's input in terms of the practicalities. But I understand what you're suggesting. It's some kind of condition to control the routing of vehicles so they go a certain route rather than through the, across the dual
I mean, I want to
carriageway.
just protect, I want to protect the residents of Caldicot and Tiffield, simple as that. And I think we should be able to find a set of words that give some comfort. I agree some of the parents you may not be able to control, but the teaching staff, the 100 teaching staff, the minibuses and the taxis can be controlled. And we should ask that for that condition to be put in. That's simply where I come from. I agree that it's sometimes slightly difficult, but it's to protect those residents.
But
Please.
the majority of driving will be under our control, in effect, because we're paying for them to be there. So I don't think it's unreasonable that we can control that element of it. There's going to be rogue parts to it, but I would certainly support you in drawing some up. Hayley?
I'm going to bring Hayley in because obviously we are redirecting vehicles to different bits of the highway network.
Yeah, I mean, there may be, in regards to the minibuses, if we tackle that one, then yes, it is possible, like to do routing agreements. But you have to bear in mind as well, these children and the locations that they're coming from are changing year on year. And there may well be children within the villages that that do require the transport. So a blanket ban on any minibuses going through the villages might not be a best move, because you could be talking about a long route
Well,
round
then
then.
you use a set of words that say, in the event of a child coming from Caldicot to Sheffield, then clearly a vehicle is allowed to come from there. But everybody else, they need to go down to use the Tove roundabout, and they then need to come up through the on the A43. So I mean, it's not beyond the wit of man to try and get this in surely.
I understand where you're coming from in that respect. And that's something that we perhaps can talk about in regards to the conditions. When you're talking about the private vehicles, unfortunately, although that can be suggested, there is no way to enforce that. When you're talking about the staff coming to the school, yes, they can advise them that they can't come in that way, but there is no way for us to enforce that.
I mean, at least if we have it on the advisory, we have it on a condition. I mean, all I'm trying to ask is guidance. It's just, let's try and just put some ratchets in here that just make it, so we should give some teeth to the conditions, please.
Councillor Humphreys.
As regards the vehicles under our control, could we also add a condition that they use the roundabouts, the Tove roundabout, the M1 roundabout, and don't use the junction, given all the concerns expressed by members about the dangerousness of that junction? I put that out, but I also am conscious that the applicant has done all this modelling, extra safety audits, and is adamant there aren't highway safety impacts, and our own highway authority and National Highways have also agreed with that. So, you know, there's also an argument that we ought to accept the objective evidence, but if members are not comfortable with the idea of 12 minibuses using the crossover, we could insist that they go a bit further and use the roundabouts. And okay, that would add to journey time, but given some children are having a 2-hour journey at the moment, to maximize their safety, that might not be unreasonable. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that is very reasonable, and I think if the condition said that we control the buses, the minibuses that we operate, because you have a change in scenarios when what's right now might not be right in the future. But if we're in control and says we control the route you use, then we can specify that there may be a new roundabout when this thing opens, so they won't need to go to the 12 roundabout. So let's not be too specific about it. I think we should say we'll be under control of what routes you use to come to our school, and we're paying for it. So the cost is on us at the end of the day, and if we have to send them further than that, we're paying for it. But I'd rather pay for safety than say, well, and I think the junction, the hard bit of it, is what it is. I don't think we're going to get any alteration to that. I'd just like to say to the people in the audience, you cannot speak. No, you're not allowed to speak. So that's the rules of engagement. I'm sorry. So yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would absolutely endorse that the comments there, and I think that the recommendation that there was no crossing over of that junction unless it was an exceptional circumstances, that's some sort of wording that we could apply to that. And I agree, if we can pay 2 or 3 more minutes of a driver, of our contracted drivers to go up through roundabouts, then let's do it, because at the end of the day, they're on our pay, and we are therefore protecting the children that they are carrying. I think we have no choice but to do that. I think to not do that would be irresponsible.
I fully agree. Do you want to come in, James, at this point? You've been talking behind me.
We think there is, if should members wish to, it'd be feasible to do a form of routing condition. We think that ultimately it's not going to control every vehicle, but it will more than likely have control over those vehicles that the council subsequently through contracts has control over, i.e. the small number of parents, guardians that are independently bringing children. They're probably going to fall outside of the scope of the condition. But it would be possible, we think, to word a condition, albeit, sorry, I just have to say the caveats that, as I said earlier, in terms of you are redirecting vehicles around in the highway network. Yes, and that may affect the length of vehicle movements, costs, etc., as well as have its own highway implications. So members do need to be cognizant of that, and so you can do it. Our recommendation would be the report as stated. I'd add a bullet point, measures to stop vehicles idling. I think that's very straightforward. Yeah, so feasibly, you could add a condition.
At the end of the day, we're paying the bill, and the vehicles we're trying to control are already tracked anyway, so we know where they are. So if they go against what we ask, then they're in breach of their own contract. So I think we should be in control on the vehicles that we control and pay for. I think that's all the committee is asking for, unless I'm misreading what you're saying. Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. Can I recommend that we accept the officer's recommendation that we give authorisation to the Assistant Director of Planning to grant this application, with the condition that there is a routing condition in there that vehicles under the control of WNC actually abide by.
I was going to suggest that I was involved in the sign off as well, having been part of the discussion.
So just to clarify, our whispering, so officers would word the condition in conjunction with our highways and legal officers, And then the final worded condition will be shared with the chairman for sign off and then added to the final decision notice on the application.
Do we have a seconder for that proposal? Yeah. They went up real blurry. Councillor Purser, I saw he caught my eye first. So the proposal you've heard before you. So with the exception of Councillor Gonzalez, who's precluded from this vote, would those in favour of the there's no against and no abstentions. That's a unanimous decision. Thank you for that. Urgent business. The only thing I would add, I was charged with talking about the 50 houses, whatever it was, or 100 houses at Kings Heath. I'm still in discussion with Stuart Timmis, who's negotiating with Persimmon to try and bring that forward. So it is still ongoing and I haven't forgotten about it. With that, I close the meeting at 4 o'clock and thank you for your attendance. Thank you.